Oh, coming at you here from the ATX. It's the Box to Box Radio podcast. Currently just hanging out in Austin, trying to stay busy, trying to stay sane during the whole shutdown, and having our regular schedules kind of impacted. But because of that, we've had some time to reach out to some of the men and women that we've kind of idolized in the sport and people that we've enjoyed watching and following their careers. So, without further ado, Trav and I are on today with Major League Soccer goalkeeper for NYCFC, Brad Stuver. So, Brad, how are you doing today?
All good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. So we like to start out interviews here. We want to be as careful as possible with Box to Box Radio. We don't want to assume any part of anybody's career or their journey or their story in the game. So we like to give our guests here an opportunity to open up and kind of share a little bit about how they got into soccer, where their career's taken them, things like that. So I want to give you an opportunity to kind of share a little bit about who you are and where soccer's taken you over the years.
Yeah, so I got started in soccer because of my older brother. He was the first one in our family to play soccer. Started when I was 4 years old, kind of followed in his footsteps, played travel, played rec, played club, played ODP. Then I moved into development academy. So I kind of touched on every part of youth soccer. Went on to Cleveland State University, a small D1 school in Cleveland, Ohio. From there, I was drafted to the Montreal Impact in the 2013 MLS draft. Went there preseason with them, did not sign a contract with them during preseason. Got picked up by MLS as a league pool goalkeeper for the 2013 season, and I was stationed in Columbus. Uh, I went to 5 or 6 different teams that year just to fill in for injured goalkeeper or if a goalkeeper got a red card. And then in 2014, Columbus signed me to their team officially. I was with them from 2013 to 2017. And then I was traded to NYCFC, and this is my third season here.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that's actually a good segue into one of the first questions I wanted to ask you. So, as you said, drafted by Montreal in 2013. I know that you were competing for a job with then homegrown product Maxime Crepeau, and it was a good battle between you guys, but ultimately didn't end up getting a contract there and signed as a league pool goalkeeper. So, a lot of our listeners out there, this concept of a pool goalkeeper is kind of a foreign concept to them. So I wanted to see if you could tell us a little bit more about your experience as a pool goalkeeper and maybe a couple of your favorite stops that you got to go while you were jumping around the league helping some teams out.
Yeah, it was definitely a foreign concept to me too. When I got dropped by Montreal, I had no idea what was next, and they kind of approached me and were like, "Hey, there's this opportunity to be a league pool goalkeeper." And they explained that it's just a goalkeeper that's signed by MLS that doesn't have affiliation with any specific team, and that any team in the league that has a hardship at goalkeeper, they can call you in to train, they can call you in to sit the bench, they can call you in to start. Like, it doesn't matter. So I took the chance because I wanted to be a pro soccer player, and for me, it just gave me an opportunity to go into different markets and get my name out there and be seen by different coaches, by different teams. And the soccer community is so small that these coaches bounce around all over the league. So it was just a good way for me to get in front of different coaches throughout the league. Probably the best place I went, I actually ended up sitting the bench for 2 different teams, and both games were in Portland. So
Oh
I
wow.
actually sat the bench twice in Portland, which was an interesting time.
Oh, wow. So I was also a goalkeeper. So the whole concept of being a pool goalkeeper was something that always intrigued me. So I was like, you're telling me that I don't have to sign a contract and I can just travel the United States and play soccer? That's awesome. Unfortunately, it never really worked out for me. But during your time in Columbus, I read you're also a goalkeeper coach at Ohio Wesleyan.
Yep.
It's a perennial D3 powerhouse. So if you could talk about your experiences in the D3 world coming from someone that played D1 soccer at Cleveland State.
Yeah, so actually when I was looking at colleges, Ohio Wesleyan was one of the schools that I was actually looking at. I wasn't a big name coming out of high school, so I was just kind of looking at different schools, D3, D2, D1. And Ohio Wesleyan approached me, and I went to their summer camp and got to know Jay Martin a little bit.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I ended up going to Cleveland State, and Ohio Wesleyan ended up winning 2 national championships in the time that I would have been with them. So maybe
Yeah.
that was a mistake on my part. But yeah, going back and coaching with him was fun. I was able to pick the brain of Jay Martin, one of the most, probably the best NCAA soccer coach in history out of all divisions. Just hearing his stories, hearing his experiences, seeing him on a day-to-day basis and how he coaches, it was eye-opening, and it was really good for the development of my game to see the other side of soccer, not just the playing aspect.
Yeah, Jay Martin's a huge name, and especially in the world. So were you there in the 2014 season as well at Ohio Wesleyan?
No, 2014, I was not there. I was actually on loan. I was bouncing around. I was at Dayton Dutch Lions and then Wilmington Hammerheads. I started in 2015. I did the 15, 16, 17 season.
Okay. I was going to ask about the 2014 national semifinal run. That would have been probably a lot of fun to be a part of. But I guess to kind of tail end off that, were you able to travel to road games with the team, or how did that work with your playing schedule?
So road games I wouldn't be able to make. I was able to make it out to, it was about 2 training sessions a week that I was able to make it out to. During their preseason, I was able to make it out a little bit more because they were able to tailor their trainings around my training.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got to as many home games as possible. Unfortunately, they would be playing on weekends that I would be traveling or on days that we would be playing. But they were really accommodating, and it was a really good experience for me.
Awesome. And you mentioned earlier about your development. You probably touched every facet of youth soccer. So what was your development like, and when did you decide to become a full-time goalkeeper?
Yeah, so I played multiple sports all the way through my sophomore year of high school. I played baseball pretty competitively until I was about 14. I played 2 years of tennis in high school. I actually played midfielder my senior year of high school. And so, I mean, I was strictly goalkeeper for club from the time I was about 10 or 11, but I still played the field for like my hometown team in high school and stuff. I played the field all the way through high school.
Oh, nice. So was that kind of a situation where you would split time, or you just full time in the midfield?
So it ended up being I played the first 5 games in goal, and then after that, our team was so bad that they threw me in the midfield. Not to say we got much better, but it just, I guess it helped. At that time, I was one of very few players that played club and had that type
Yeah.
of pedigree. So they just kind of put me in the midfielder, and I definitely had to get my fitness up. That was probably the biggest thing for me that year.
Oh yeah, and I bet that's helped a lot with you playing with your feet out of the back, especially in New York with a team that likes to keep the ball and they do play out of the back. So
Yeah, I've been very fortunate from early on to high school to playing under Greg Berhalter to playing here in New York. I mean, playing with the feet is one of the main concepts of all of that. So it's definitely been beneficial.
Yeah, and like you've touched on, you've gotten to experience multiple different, I guess, team cultures, locker room experiences. You got to work with several different coaches. So, who is the most? I'm not going to say best, but the most interesting person that you've got to share a locker room with in your time in the league?
Wow. Most interesting. I think I'll go with Kai Kamara. I mean, Kai's a good friend. I really like Kai. We get along, but he is one of the most outgoing, one of the most vocal, one of the most like flamboyant personalities you'll ever meet. And it's never a dull moment with Kai. So I think he definitely wins the most interesting teammate that I've been in the locker room with.
Man, I've got to be honest. He's one of the guys that's like on my MLS bucket list of guys to get to have a conversation with. Um, I grew up in the Dallas area, so we've been diehard. My family and I have been diehard FC Dallas fans for as long as I can remember. And when he was at Houston, he was the only player on the Dynamo that I was like, man, that guy's awesome. And just watching his success and his tenure throughout the league has been really, really cool.
Yeah, he's ridiculous. He's a really good guy too. So, like, I know there's a lot of negative media around some of the stuff that he does, but ultimately, at the end of the day, he's a really good guy and really cares.
Absolutely. And so we asked you about players, so I'm going to kick it to the other side. Who's the best coach that you've ever played for? That can be from college all the way through now, or even with the pool teams you played with.
So this one's going to go a little bit off off the rails a little bit. The best coach that I've ever had that's had a significant impact on me probably was my college goalkeeper coach. His name is Denny Chorne. He is a Romanian. He came to the States and played in the indoor league. He played for the Cleveland Crunch for several years. And he's actually now my agent. So
wow.
he was the one that took me my freshman year at Cleveland State, and he told me that he saw something in me that he thinks that I could go pro. I didn't believe him at the time, but he was like, if you trust me and you work with me for the next 4 years, I will get you to where you want to be. And he stopped being the goalkeeper coach at Cleveland State my sophomore year so that I could work with him outside of the college season, so it wasn't breaking any NCAA rules. And I've been with him the moment I signed pro. He got his agent's license, and he's been with me ever since. So he's definitely been the guy that's had the most influence on me.
So if we could go out of order a little bit here. So you mentioned working out like in the summers with your goalkeeper coach after your sophomore year. You also had an opportunity to play PDL for 2 different summers. Was he involved in any of that, or if you could kind of elaborate and talk about life as a lower league player as well?
Yeah, so he was just involved in like individual training. So I would just go to him for individual training 2-3 times a week, and then I would get game experience elsewhere, and that's where PDL kind of came in. I didn't have the greatest PDL experience just because I was on teams that were there 1 year, then folded, then came back up and folded again. And I had coaches that wanted to give time to different goalkeepers, so you didn't really get a string of games. So in 2 seasons in PDL, I maybe played 12 games, something like that. But I mean, everything happens for a reason. I would look back on that, and I got to meet a lot of great guys that I played with, and it was an experience, and it helped me grow as a player. But on the field, it wasn't the greatest.
Yeah, definitely can relate to that. I had an opportunity to play some PDL as well, so I know it's not always glitz and glamour.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask you a question now that man, I've always wanted to get to talk to somebody who's got to experience at least a little bit with this weird, wacky time in MLS. So I read that one of the teams that you got to go and train with and be in the game day roster for while you were a pool goalkeeper in 2013 was Chivas USA. And so I love Chivas USA. I love the whole enigma that was Chivas USA. So what was the culture like, even just the little experience while you were there? What was the culture like at that club?
Man, that was probably one of the most interesting trips I ever had. Going in and training with Chelis was an experience. I remember walking out from the locker room at StubHub and walking down to their field, and he would just have Mexican music playing on the loudspeakers the entire training session. So like you walk on the field and all of a sudden music blaring, and I'm just like looking around. I was like, is this real? And then I just remember the day before we headed out for the game, we did a shooting contest. It was me, Patrick McLean, and Dan Kennedy. Dan had taken a red card. Patrick was going to play the game, and I was going to sit the bench. And we do this shooting drill where it's 3 different lines. Like each team is like playing against each other. But Chalice comes up to everybody. He's like, okay, if you win, I give you $1,000 each. If you guys win, I give you $1,000 each. And then he's like, if the goalkeepers win, I give them $1,000 each. And I'm just like sitting there. This is my first year in the league, and I was on minimum. I was like, wait, is this guy serious? Is he really just gonna give like $1,000? And like the goalkeepers stood on their heads during this. Like Dan Kennedy knew that me and Patrick were on minimum, so he went all out for it. We ended up winning, and that was one of the trips that we went to Portland. And Chalice actually was like, yeah, here's $1,000, go to the Adidas like store. So like me, Patrick, and Dan got $1,000, and he's like, yeah, go to the Adidas store, buy yourself whatever you want. I was like, wow.
That's
yeah, that was
incredible.
It's probably one of the wildest stories I have from time as a professional.
Yeah, I've heard some wild things because about Chalice. You know, you hear about the outburst on the touchline and kind of, you know, his kind of tough love relationship with his players. But man, that's incredible.
He was an interesting guy.
And yeah, I loved that time in the league to kind of, you know, it was great fanfare to watch. You couldn't look away. It's great.
It was a train wreck.
Oh,
Can't
yeah.
And then unfortunate for him, the MLS stadiums have a no smoking rule. So,
oh man,
I know he was just smoke on the sidelines.
Found ways. Oh yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. Oh man.
Wow.
Man, well let's move on to a club that's still in the league and I'd argue is coming into some of the best seasons that they've had since their inception back in 2015, and that's NYCFC, your current club. You've been there for a couple years now. Who are some guys that are maybe unsung or some guys that don't get enough credit that are under the radar that we need to be keeping our eyes on in the near future?
Well, I'll definitely say that Maxi Morales doesn't get enough love. He gets some attention, but he doesn't get nearly enough from the media, from MLS. This guy is probably one of the best players I've played with. The things he does offensively, the things he does defensively is unbelievable. But another one to look out for, I think, is James Sands, young center back 6. I think he's going to be a real special player, and I hope that he continues to grow. And as he continues to grow, he makes the right steps in his career because he's going to be really fun to watch.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about James Sands because I know that he's kind of bounced around in a couple positions for you guys. Where do you see him having the best future? I mean, you get to train with him week in, week out. Where do you feel like he's got the highest ceiling positionally on the field?
Personally, I played with him as a 6 and a center back, and I like him better at the center back position. His physicality is really good. His recovery is really good. Positioning is really good. And he can play with his feet. So anymore, like you need center backs that have all of that they can play out of the back. They can win the aerial duels. They won't back down to guys like Josie Altidore or Wayne Rooney. So, I mean, I think he's got all the tools. And personally, I'd like to see him stick with center back.
That's great to hear. And yeah, I wanted to ask you next about another academy product that has really taken off here in the past calendar year, and that's Gio Reyna. So you got to be there right at your start at NYCFC was kind of when he was rising through the youth academy ranks, and he was scoring goals at GA Cup, and was getting call-ups for the youth national team, and then of course he got that big money move to Borussia Dortmund. How high do you think the ceiling is for Gio Reyna, and do you have any good stories about either watching him or getting to train with him?
So first, I think the ceiling is ridiculously high. This kid is really good. I remember in 2017 preseason, second day, NYCFC always brings academy kids with us to the first leg of preseason so that we have more numbers, so that we can do more things. I remember talking to Ben Sweat. I knew him from Columbus, and I was just kind of talking to him after day 2, and I was asking about like who Gio was because I just saw him. I was like, yeah, who is he? Like, is he just like the winger, like the starting winger with Jack? He was like, no, that's an academy kid. I was like, wait, what do you mean he's an academy kid? He was like, yeah, that's Gio Reyna, Claudio's son. I was like, really? He was like, yeah. I was like, nah, he looks like he should be starting on like the left wing with Jack on the right. He was like, yeah, man, he's good, but nah, he's just an academy kid. And from that day on, like anytime he trained with us, I always thought that he was the caliber of just like stepping into the first team and playing with us. Uh, I mean, physically, tactically, technically, all of that stuff. So I think the other big thing for him is his family keeps him grounded. They really keep him humble, and they make him work for everything. They don't just say, here, go take it. They really make him work, and they say, like, this is your career. You have to make things happen. So Claudio kind of took a step back when Gio was trying to make his decision whether he wanted to play in MLS, go to college, or go to Europe. And he was like, it's your decision, it's your career, like whatever you think is best. I will guide you as a father, but ultimately it's your decision, and you're the one that has to make it work.
That's awesome. Yeah, and with Claudio, I mean, how many guys get to say that their mentor growing up and their father was one of the most decorated U.S. men's national team players of all time? And I was sad to hear the news that he was leaving you guys at NYCFC, but Trav and I are Austin guys. We're super excited for him to be down here in Austin and to see the level of players that he's able to bring into the city, and hopefully we can get that club up and running.
Yeah, I mean, we were definitely sad to lose him, but Austin definitely hired the right guy for what they need to do. So we're happy for him and his family.
Absolutely. So we're going to take a step back a little bit, just look at the big picture. If you can pinpoint one moment in your career, whether it's a key save you made or the turning point of something, what's the best moment of your career?
So in my professional career, I would have to say it was an international friendly that we played in Columbus. It was 2015. We were playing Valencia. The number 2 at the time, Matt Lamson, had just gotten injured. So it gave me a chance to play in a game and show what I was capable of. And we lost 1-0, but I played extremely well, had 4 or 5 good saves, played well out of the back, all that stuff. And that's kind of when I took over the number 2 spot in Columbus, and I never gave it back. So I think like from that point on, that was kind of the turning point in my career that gave me the opportunity to be the number 2 and continue to progress.
Awesome. I think that's it for that we have today. I think Mason, maybe you wanted to wrap up a little bit.
Yeah. Going off script here, but I had one more question that I wanted to end on with you. I know that we have a lot of young academy kids and players here in Austin that listen to the pod and are looking up to guys like you, guys that have made a career in professional sports. So if you had one word of advice for a kid trying to make it to where you're at right now and playing professional sports week in, week out, what would your advice be to that kid?
Honestly, I would just tell him to play as much as possible. And what I mean by that is not just like, not when you have club training, not when you have things mandated, but whenever you have free time, just go out in your backyard, meet up with friends, play 2v2, find a wall and kick the ball. I think the more repetitions you can get, the better you'll be, and the more creative of a player you will be. So, like they always say, you need 10,000 hours to master a craft. So, the more touches you can get at a younger age, the farther ahead you'll be by the time like you get to high school, by the time you get to college. So it's just one of those things where just perfecting your craft by getting as many touches in as possible.
Yeah, I'd say that's awesome, and I love that that's something that they can go accomplish that now, especially with all the free time going on. Every kid's probably got a wall or a fence they can kick a ball into. Just gotta let the parents know, hey, mom, I could be a professional soccer player. So I'm sorry about the fence, but gotta get my touches in.
Exactly. Can't yell at me. I'm trying to become a professional soccer player.
That's right.
Seriously.
Oh man. Well, Brad, thank you so much for your time. We hope that you guys are staying safe, healthy, and sane. I know that in New York, you guys have had a brunt of the cases and for coronavirus. So we're hoping that you guys are staying safe and staying busy. So yeah, thanks again for being on and joining us.
Well, thanks again for having me, and appreciate the kind words. Hopefully you guys are staying safe down there in Texas as well.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Brad.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.